guys, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. So today we're going to be talking about John chapter 8 here, starting in verse 1 and going through verse 11. And this is the famous scene of Jesus writing in the dust when they bring forth the woman caught in adultery. And so I kind of want to go through that and maybe go through what Jesus might have been writing in the dust. So here goes. Verse 1. But Jesus went on to the Mount of Olives. At dawn he appeared again in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women." Correction, it's commanded that you stone both of them, not just the woman. Now what do you say? They were using this question as a trap, in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first. I think that's a key part of it. Until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." So, there are two major interpretations on this verse. And the first one is that it's a nod to the Old Testament verse in Jeremiah 17:13, which says, "O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away from you will be written in the dust because they have forsaken the Lord, the spring of living water." Now, I'm willing to say that this could indeed fit with how Jesus teaches the Jewish community. But I'm not solely convinced that this is the case here, that this is a throwback to that verse in Jeremiah. The second idea is that Jesus was writing the sins of the individual men in the dust. Now, if we go back and look, it says, "O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away from you will be written in the dust because they have forsaken the Lord, the spring of living water." So, all who forsake you will be put to shame. Well, would it be shameful for the men standing there if Jesus was writing their individual sins down for everyone to see? I would think so, and I think maybe that's where this verse in Jeremiah comports with what's going on here, what's being seen in this scene. And that's the second idea that resonates with me, for the simple fact that he says, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." He then proceeds to continue writing in the dust as they all walk away, beginning with the oldest. Why would the eldest walk away first? Well, they have the most sins. These things are being written down. Maybe, just maybe, they have more shame and more guilt for what they're doing. Or it's a combination of the both. He's writing these things down in order to shame them, just as Jeremiah says, "You will be put to shame." The eldest walking away first makes sense because he could he could have had the most sins written down. Jesus was keen to what they were doing here. He said, if he would have said, do not stone her, they would have been quick to dismiss him for going against the Mosaic law, even though the Mosaic law says that both the man and the woman were to be brought forth and to be stoned. And had he said, stone her, they would have turned him into the Romans, because the Romans forbid the Jews from sentencing anyone to death. See the trial of Jesus for this one. But unsurprisingly, Jesus makes the most level-headed choice here. Now, I'm going to hear rumblings of people disagreeing with me, saying that, oh, Jesus wouldn't do this. He wouldn't have written down the sins of these men on the ground. It's just not the way that he works. You know, he's some long-haired, hippie, lovey-dovey guy that was never harsh with anyone, and that's patently false. Jesus could be what we would consider harsh and brash, but he did so out of love. And I think he would have done so here to teach them a lesson. To say, you know, you're going against the law here and you're trying to set a trap for me, and I see what you're doing, and it's not going to work. So here, let me list your sins, because you brought this woman who's obviously been caught in the act of something, you know, in your eyes abhorrent, but look at all these things that you've done. And I don't think it would have been against him to publicly shame them. Because if we look back to the Jeremiah verse, it says you will be put to shame. Well, it doesn't say you'll be put to shame privately. Could have been public. And I see no reason why Jesus wouldn't have done that. He could be very blunt when necessary. And this just to me seems like one of those times. Now, I could be wrong, and he could have been writing down the verse of Jeremiah, and he also could have been writing down the Mosaic law as it set to teach a lesson of, you guys aren't going about this the right way. But an important question to ask is, how would you, a sinful, fallen creature, handle this? It becomes so easy to be like the scribes and Pharisees and come before Jesus thinking that we are in the right. Yes, we've seen that before. And be humbled very quickly by our own sins. Yes, this is the central message of the Sermon on the Mount, of him saying, yeah, well, you haven't committed adultery, but tell me about your lust. So this is where this has been said a lot, but I'll say it again. Better to remove the plank from your own eye before bothering with the speck in your brother's eye. It would have been better for them to not have brought that woman in front of them, not only knowing that they were breaking the Mosaic law by bringing only her and not the man as well. And it also begs the question of, how did they know she had committed adultery? Did they set a trap for her? Or what? Or did she commit adultery with one of the men that brought her out in front of Jesus to say, what shall we do with her? It's a very telling question that we don't have an answer to. It's always easier to be self-righteous and think that we're in the right when it comes to these matters, and say, oh, well, I never would do X, Y, or Z. And, you know, it's like, yeah, maybe you wouldn't. But tell me about some of the stuff you have done. And I think this is one of those key times where Jesus is trying to bring that up with them. He's like, okay, yes, this woman's been caught in the act of adultery. I know what the Mosaic law says. I can't sentence her to death. What do you want me to do about this? But he also makes it very clear to them that there's the Roman law that says I can't sentence her to death. There's the Mosaic law, but they're not following the Mosaic law because they didn't bring the man along with them. And so he's saying, but there's this other, there's the spirit of this law that you're not following. And that is, yeah, she's done this thing, but tell me about what you've done. I'm interested in you. It's like you've shown this woman sin, you publicly shamed her. But tell me about yourself. And then maybe he says, wait, don't do that. I'll tell you about yourself. I'll just write it here on the ground for all to see. Maybe that'll teach you a lesson about how publicly shaming this woman is wrong. And about how you have just as much sin in your life as this woman does. I don't know. It could be. And I won't try to persuade you that it is or isn't. That's all I have for this week. Thanks, guys. See you next time.